Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Neighborhood Candidate Forum. My name is John Lisbon, and I'm president of Seattle Fair Growth. Our mission is to engage people citywide on issues that affect livability and sustainability, and I think this meeting tonight should suffice. We are very excited to have this forum. We're very excited to have you all here today. Listening to the candidates, this is a really important election, as you know. This meeting is going to be recorded, and first I'd like to thank our sponsors, and let me share my screen here so you can check out our great sponsors. Everybody from Beacon Hill to Wallingford Community Council, TreePack, Magnolia Community Council, and South Park and Georgetown, everybody in between. So we really thank our sponsors for helping us, and they've also helped with some of the questions to help us put them together. So first, I'd like to introduce the candidates for Citywide Council Position 8. Teresa Mosqueda is currently the chair of housing and the incumbent in this race. Teresa, who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, served as the consumer advocate on the Washington Affordable Care Act Exchange Board and was involved in the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, for almost 10 years. Ken Wilson, first-time candidate, is a licensed bridge structural engineer. He grew up in Nevada and moved to Seattle in 1993 to complete his master's in engineering, civil engineering at the UW. He now owns Integrity Structural Engineering, which just completed work on the pedestrian bridge across Northgate, which is quite exciting. I was there just today, watching the Mariners lose. Nikita Oliver in position 8 is a Seattle-based creative community organizer, abolitionist, I'll have to look that up, educator, and attorney. Among other things, Nikita is the executive director of Creative Justice, an arts-based alternative to incarceration and healing, engaged youth-led community-based program. And Sarah Nelson is also in position 9, facing off with Nikita. Her background spans the private and public sector as a small business owner of Fremont Brewery, as many of you know, and legislative aid for former Seattle Council member Richard Conlon. And now we'll move to our mayoral candidates, both of who have been and are city council presidents. Bruce Harrell is the former city council president. He's a graduate of Garfield High School and the University of Washington. He served on the council from 2008 to 2019. For 5 days, he was the city's top post after Ed Murray resigned in 2017. And we have Lorena Gonzalez, current Seattle City Council president. And Gonzalez grew up in Central Washington in a migrant farm working family. And for 10 years before her election to the council, she worked as a civil rights attorney. She received her law degree from Seattle University. The questions tonight have been selected by our sponsor groups, and we will be focusing our questions around neighborhood issues. And since our forum is just 1 hour, I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm going to pass the baton to our great moderator, Mary Houseladen. Mary?
Thank you so much, John, for passing it off. So thank you, candidates, for all being here. This is going to be a 3-part forum tonight. We will have a series of questions that I will walk through. And the order we're going to walk through is Bruce, Lorena, Nikita. Sarah, is Sarah here? I didn't see her on the participants list. Sarah, are you there? Ken, and then Teresa, and then we'll rotate forward on that. So in the first one, you'll have 1 minute to answer the questions. These are the questions that have been put together by the neighborhood organization, and you had a chance to review them so you could really provide good answers. So please try to keep to the 1 minute. If you're going over, I'll just quickly interrupt you so we can move on to the next person. And then we're going to have a lightning round of some fun questions. These questions are just, basically yes, no questions, and I'll go over that when I get there. And then at the very end, each of you will have 2 minutes to provide your closing statements and major points that you would like to cover. So, and our goal is to be able to finish by 7:15. And before we get started with the questions, I want to see if any candidate has any questions about how we're going to approach this. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Kenneth Wilson. So it's more statements. It's not a debate back and forth. There's no
Right.
rebuttal. It's just tell us your thoughts.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
But if someone hears what you say, Ken, if they may choose to incorporate something to respond to that. But everybody gets 1 minute at the beginning, the next is the lightning round, then finally your 2-minute closing. So I'll start with the first one, and I will be starting, Bruce, with you. And the first one is regarding public safety. There have been major delays in police and fire responses. Property crimes do not get a prompt police response. What will you do to address the severe public safety issues that are routinely happening in our communities today? Bruce.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for having me on your forum this evening. Well, I came out earlier about 7 months ago and saying that I don't use the term defund the police because I have certain outcomes I'm trying to drive. 7-minute response times, best practices for police safety. I say at the same time, bias-free policing, and that's why I was the candidate to sponsor the bias-free policing law. And we will introduce the Race and Data initiative to make sure that there's unbiased policing. But at the end of the day, our charter initiative to make sure that we have a culturally competent, effective police and public safety organization. The neighborhoods deserve that, the people deserve that. And this is a common denominator in all neighborhoods, whether it's rich or poor, everything in between, or even racial demographics. We all want safety. There are a lot of things that I will introduce during our platform that will improve public safety in addition to an effective police department. Oops.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for your comments there. Next to Lorena.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lorena Gonzalez. Good to be here with all of you. Quite simply put, I think this is where smarter, more efficient responses to nonviolent crimes comes in. And that is something that I would be interested in standing up as the next mayor of the city of Seattle. I have a strong interest in scaling up, for example, the community service officer program, which really plays an important role in addressing many of the nonviolent service calls that the city currently receives. And so I think it's really important for us to invest in the community service officer program and neighborhood public safety liaison programs, which I have championed on the city council, would like to do more of that. And I think that in doing that, we free up our police department to actually focus on police work, which is in my mind, the most violent crime in our city. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lorena. Okay, next on to position 9, we will start with Nikita answering that question.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to ground ourselves in the reality of what we need. In 2021, the National Institute for Criminal Justice released analysis of 3 years of 911 call data, finding that 80% of calls are requiring a non-criminal response. And in the future, it would be appropriate for up to 49% of calls to receive an alternative non-sworn response. 911 in our city is now in the process of being civilianized, the Community Safety and Communications Center, which allows us to continue to grow our menu of options and navigate providing that non-sworn response, increasing Health One, pursuing the mayor's recommendation of Triage One, and then growing our community-based responses. This will inherently decrease response times, both in terms of providing people exactly what they need when they're in crisis. If you need de-escalation or you need a mental health provider, that's what we should be providing. And so this will help us decrease times and will move us forward rather than defaulting to an armed officer providing exactly what folks need when they're in crisis.
Thank you so much, Nikita. Okay, moving on to Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Don't start the clock yet, please. I'm sorry to have been late. Can you please remind me, is this a 2-minute answer?
This is a 1 minute. And would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Yes, please.
All right. So regarding public safety, there have been major delays in police and fire response. Property crimes do not get a prompt police response. What will you do to address the severe public safety issues that are routinely happening in our communities today?
Well, let me first say that I am extremely troubled by this. So I share these concerns, and I believe that we need to make sure that our police department is adequately staffed in order to deal with the very wide range of calls, everything from property crimes to active shootings and everything in between. I recognize that the police are often called to respond to calls that are better served, answered by social service professionals. So I support, there's little disagreement that those services need to be expanded. However, I do not believe that the funds for that should come from the police department, because Article 6 of the charter says there shall be maintained adequate police protection in every district of our city, and that's not happening right now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And then on to Ken.
Here we go. I'm unmuted. Thanks. Yes. So major delays with police and also fire response. This has to do with the major cuts that the council has done to the budget. 300 officers are missing. And so this means that they have to reprioritize how they use them. They can't be on patrols. The best response times occurs when there's a patrol available with a more immediate action. The same is happening for the fire department. Fire department is now asked to take on jobs it was never meant to do. It's answering homeless calls, trying to deal with issues there. So how do I address this? I will bring back a strong relationship with the police and the fire department. Again, we've cut so much of that in our battle with the police. So we need to restore that. I would try and bring back all the budgets and try and reinforce an opportunity for those police to maintain their staff, to incentivize and hire new good staff and train them. And those are the important steps. It's all about public safety, and it's such an important part of everything we do. So these responses are just indicative of the big challenges that we're having.
Thank you so much, Ken. And then finally, Teresa, you will be the last to answer this question.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to see many of you again. I want to start with the conversation rooted in frontline first responders themselves. The firefighters, members of IAFF 27 have endorsed me because they appreciate what I have been doing to try to identify more funding for firefighters through the Health One response system, mental health services for our providers, making sure that we're investing in long-term solutions like a Triage One and a new coordinated call center so that we can appropriately deploy first responders for the type of call that we're receiving. Let's start with the calls and the conversations I've had with officers themselves who are members of SPD. They have told us repeatedly they are being asked to do too much, more than a police officer should be doing. They should not be that first responder when we need a mental health provider, a case manager, a housing connector. And they themselves have said that. So what we have done is try to reduce the type of situations where officers with a badge and a gun are showing up when what we really need is mental health providers, case managers, housing connectors. That's the type of right scale I've done. Oh,
thank you so much, Teresa. Sorry to cut you off there. All right, so now on to our second question. Now I'd like you to consider zoning as one tool. Some say that changing the name of single family to neighborhood residential is in name only. Others say that it's a significant step toward building more density in our residential parts of the city. Is it really a name only? And second, will the change produce more affordable housing? If so, how? And we will start with Lorena this time.
Great, thank you so much. Appreciate the question. So I do think it's important for our neighborhoods to be called what they actually are, which are residential neighborhoods. It's an area where we all agree that people primarily live in those areas. And so I do think it's important for us to move our nomenclature about how we talk about our zoning in a direction that is more factually accurate and representative of what we're actually seeing that land in our city being used. It is not a carte blanche zoning change, but I do support the city moving towards a direction where we're actually taking the steps necessary to do the outreach, engagement, and modifications to our zoning laws to allow for more inclusive neighborhoods, because I want to live in a city and I want to build a city as the next mayor that is not exclusive. I want to build one that's inclusive and that allows people of all socioeconomic strata to be able to live and work in our beautiful city.
Thank you so much, Lorena, for that answer. Okay, next on, we're going to have Nikita. You get to answer that question as well.
Yeah, so the name change that has been proposed by Councilmember Mosqueda is about cleaning up language. And as Councilmember Gonzalez just said, aligning with what is really happening in our neighborhoods. And so while this first step is a name change, the reality of the legacy of exclusionary zoning does still exist, and we need to do the work of ending apartment bans. This means that as we approach our 2024 comprehensive plan, in addition to aligning the language, which I think is also important for legal purposes, we need to acknowledge that 12% of the land is receiving 85% of the development, and 80.3% of our land is single family zoned. That is just it's a problem because it means that density is isolated in a few areas and causes more gentrification and displacement. This alone will not increase our affordable housing supply. It will only happen with intentional development, zoning changes, community benefits agreements, investments from the city, and preserving our current affordable supply of dignified affordable units.
Thank you so much, Nikita. Next up, Sarah, for the same question.
Well, I listened to the September 24th Land Use Committee meeting, and it seemed that, to your question, that they were sticking to this idea that that was just a name change, that legislation. But clearly, why change a name unless you're going to change zoning or code or something? So I think there's nervousness because people don't really know what this name change is going to lead to, what changes are coming. I know that the Planning Commission does have some ideas, but what I think is important is that we don't just have a one-size-fit-all change to single-family zoning or neighborhood residential zoning across the city, because what I'm hearing from people living in neighborhoods that are undergoing gentrification and displacement is they're concerned about added density because it could drive out people, families that have lived in this area for a long time. So I just think that whatever changes are coming, we need to involve neighborhoods. We had a neighborhood planning process in the late 90s, and I think that we really need to pay attention to the differences and nuances in all neighborhoods.
Thank you, Sarah, for your answer there. Thank you very much. Next up, Ken.
Rid of the mute. Thanks again. No, this is not about naming. And we've saw very clearly, they've talked about modification, reality, alignment. Those are the words that they're using. I tell you, this is about protecting our neighborhoods. You can't accept these small seemingly elements that are actually wrong. So what zoning is about, why did we put up zoning in the first place? It's about function and how we can make our society work. So if you want to, again, try and pretend you can develop anywhere you want, everyone got to buy the sewer again. Everyone got to buy the streets again because they can't work. They're one-way streets outside our door right here. It doesn't work. So the people that are doing this have something else in mind, obviously. It's not about name. Why would we use so much of our precious council time for name alone? So this is not about name, but we have to go back to protecting our neighborhoods, and that's what I'm about.
Thank you very much, Ken. All right, Teresa.
Thanks for the question. The name neighborhood residential and the request to make this change in statute has been made for almost 5 years now. The Seattle Planning Commission was the one who has been pushing for this before I got elected. The Seattle Planning Commission that's made up of architects and structural engineers, folks who know this information because they actually have been studying it, have suggested a name change to align with the current fabric of our city. Earlier today, I was talking with the members of the Queen Anne Community Council, a neighborhood that I used to live in an apartment there, surrounded by single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, apartments like mine. It was more inclusive than the name allows you to currently believe. 75% of our land is actually a misnomer right now. That title, single family, doesn't actually apply to many of the neighborhoods that I know some of you, and I've visited you in our neighborhood meetings. We want an inclusive Seattle, one that has gentle infill, one that has more inclusive conversation, but we cannot have those conversations about the 2023 comp plan unless we make this change right now, so that throughout 2022, we can have deep conversation and community to talk about whatever is coming next. That's why we're doing it now, to have those conversations.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for that answer. And finally, on question 2, Bruce, you're up.
Thank you. It's nice being in the last position on some of these tough questions. So I think
They are tough.
I think the angst around the name change really speaks to the mistrust in City Hall right now, that given all of the urgencies of the issues, I don't know why we would spend a lot of time on a name change right now. So my position is very simple, that we have to work with communities. We understand the history of racist exclusionary zoning, but we have to build from community. We have to work with the neighborhoods. We have to make sure that their voice is at the table. You look at what they did in Minneapolis as an example, and some activity in California. We recognize that we're trying to increase density where it makes sense, but I don't think it's a top-down approach. And I will lead these discussions. It'll be part of our transit master plan discussions, part of our comp plan discussions. And so we will look at where some of our earlier recommendations through the MHA process, the HALA process, where they worked and where they are letting people down, where there are unintended results and increased gentrification. So we will work with our neighborhoods, make sure all voices at the table, and that's the discussion I will lead.
Thank you very much, Bruce. So that concludes us now, all the question 2 from everyone. Now we're moving to question 3. Many of us support ADUs as a potentially affordable housing because of city regulations and city and county permitting fees. Most in-law apartments are expensive to build, and the city has done nothing to address affordability. What will you do to make in-law apartments less expensive so more are built by homeowners in existing houses? And this time we will start with Nikita with that answer.
Yeah, so this is a significant density tool. And to be honest, it is a private market solution that also does not guarantee that affordable housing will be built. So it is an important strategy. As a city, we could be providing incentives and supports for building affordable ADUs and DADUs, and hopefully incentivizing at the lowest AMIs of 0 to 30% to ensure that these affordable units really go to those who need them most. We should be working with the Economic Development Initiative and the Office of Housing to provide grants specifically for development. It can be hard to access the capital for homeowners to be able to develop these, and thinking through what are our subsidy options. And lastly, really guaranteeing some fast tracking of permits for not just ADUs and DADUs, but all affordable housing developments. The permitting process, the length of time that it takes can greatly increase costs that are accrued by a developer or a property owner. And the more we can decrease that, the better for developing our affordable housing supply.
Thank you very much, Nikita, for that answer. Next on to Sarah.
Well, when desired housing products aren't being produced, it's incumbent upon City Council, SDCI, OPCD to identify barriers in the building and land use codes that are preventing the production, and then fix them. So for example, I know that to build a DADU, you have to install sprinklers, and that costs $20,000. If you want to build more than one ADU in a home, it's treated like an apartment building. So there are added expenses and features that need to be included. So here's what we need to do. In general, we need to align our regulatory environment with our policy goals. Want more housing? Then figure out how to do that and take down the barriers that could be existing. I think that Portland's residential infill project is important. They have increased their supply of ADUs, and they're easier to build. They're less expensive. We could take a page from their book and find out how they did it. And you really have to get into the code details to figure out how can we make it more affordable. I have a long list of ideas. Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, I'm having to cut you guys off. We have such limited time tonight. Ken, you're up next.
The accessory dwelling units, I do kind of like the idea of. I think there's a couple things going on here that maybe people aren't aware of. So first off, permitting through the city is borders on impossible for anything from kitchens to real buildings. And many of these are designed by engineers and architects that understand the law, but somehow it just sits there. It doesn't go through. So we have a big thing that we have to fix there at the city to make that happen. So like I said, I'm absolutely not against, and I do favor some of these things, but you have to understand that an accessory dwelling unit on your property isn't something that everyone really welcomes. And so unless it's going to be used for supplemental income or things like that. So there's not a big giant push for it. What I would say is that I would help to allow that these units could be sold. The most important thing that we have here is to try and get ownership. People that can own their own facility, whether it's a small house in this way or another means, So if we could supplement a way that they could buy these properties, then that's value. We want to really do something that gives people ownership.
Thank you so much, Ken, for that. I feel like I'm cutting you guys off a little bit. Sorry about that. Teresa, you're up next.
We appreciate you keeping us on time, so thank you for doing that. Part of the thing that I think is driving this conversation, both around the name change and the call for more accessory dwelling units, duplexes and triplexes, is because it's what the public also is asking for. I'm looking at the Seattle Chamber of Commerce poll from Friday. It shows that over 60% of the community wants to have more affordable units created across Seattle. It specifically says that they want 64% support building new housing in the neighborhood, 62% support more density in single family housing zones by allowing duplexes and triplexes. And that also includes the work that we did in the past around ADUs and DADUs. The community is calling for this because, one, it allows for greater density in the city to help reduce the encroaching on forest and farmland and wetland. And when we create neighborhoods that are walkable and livable, that's a good thing for all of our public's health and the health of our planet. Number two, because it allows for greater generational opportunities to live on site, for families to have their elders or for families to have their kiddos on their place, and ADUs and DADUs allow for that. We've provided funding to help create those, and I'll talk more about that later.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to start with you, Bruce, on this question.
I'm sorry, I have grandkids running around here. Is this the same
No problem.
question on DADUs and
Yeah, on ADUs, on whether or not this will also result in more affordable housing. And
Absolutely. It's an extremely effective tool. I like a lot of what I heard earlier about relaxing the regulatory standards and the review process, making it affordable, finding out whether we're using non-traditional lenders, whether the community block grant organizations or community development financial institutions. Under our leadership, we're going to make sure that we allow, by loosening up the regulatory structure, making sure people have access to capital, we allow people to actually do this. We all know this could be an extra revenue source and income for people who want to stay in their houses. So you'll see us, and I could also talk about micro housing and sort of legalizing apartment types of structures in other areas. But with respect to ADUs and DADUs, absolutely, it's going to be an effective tool, and we'll double down on it.
thank you so much, Bruce. All right, and Lorena, you're the last one on that question.
Sure. So, ADUs and DADUs are really important strategy to both allowing families who are on the edge to continue to stay in our city by allowing them to have that rental income by creating an ADU or DADU. So I think it is an important affordability opportunity. I also am really proud to have been one of the council members in 2019 that was really leading the effort around making sure that we're reforming the previous laws to reduce the barriers and allow more ADUs and DADUs to be constructed throughout the city. Since 2019, we've seen about a 53% increase in ADUs, 112% increase in DADUs, and 80% of all of the new DADUs and ADUs being developed are in areas that are high risk of displacement. So this is a clear strategy for us to continue to combat gentrification and displacement and increase affordability for existing homeowners while allowing an opportunity for people to actually be able to access those neighborhoods.
Thank you so much, Lorena. All right, now on to question 4. We hear a lot about affordability without a definition. What is your definition of affordability? What is your plan to ensure that our neighbors who are making less than $50,000 can afford to stay in Seattle? And this time we will start with Sarah. You'll be the first one answering that.
Okay, so policymakers and housing providers use AMI to determine affordability, but I think that a better approach, area medium income, is to look at displacement rates in certain neighborhoods to determine how gentrification is driving people out, and then implement an anti-displacement strategy to allow people to stay in their homes. And this should include significant investments in foreclosure prevention, first home buyer assistance grants, and direct cash relief to renters. and make sure that we're creating the conditions in which families can stay in Seattle. Now, one way that we can maintain affordability across the city is to retain the existing naturally affordable housing that is supplied by small housing providers. And we have to make sure that the laws that are passed, and I hear a lot about this on the campaign trail, do not drive out those small providers, because their properties will be redeveloped for market rate.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that answer. Next up, Ken.
Thanks for this question, really, and I do appreciate this. This is one thing that I keep hearing a lot about, affordability, and it really drives me a little bit to find out what is affordable and what's going on. I like the basis that we have a certain percentage of our income, $50,000. That sounds like a lot, right? And so maybe 38%, 40% is somewhere around that $1,600 a month. So it's really about, as a consumer, what can you do with your $1,600 a month? Right now, we have a city where we're adding infrastructure. You saw that Northgate pedestrian bridge I just opened. So I was out there on Saturday, and this is what gives us mobility. You could use your $1,600 maybe all the way down at Angle Lake and get a 3-bedroom apartment. Maybe that's what you want. Here in Seattle, we're having other challenges. So it's up to our consumers to help us find these best solutions for them. But also it's about zoning and trying to prevent situations where we're pushing out families, again, protecting neighborhoods, but we'll come back to this in another question. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ken. All right, Teresa.
Thank you so much. So I think about defining affordability in terms of making sure our teachers can afford to live in this city, construction workers, line people, folks who are fixing our transportation systems, building our buildings, providing food in our cafeterias, and caring for our kiddos. Affordability should be for everyone from 0% area median income to 30% is extremely low income, 30% to 60% is the working families definition of affordable housing. I want teachers and those who are caring for our community to be able to live in the community that they're serving. I'm not only prioritizing that, we put that into legislation when we passed Jumpstart. Jumpstart progressive revenue provides 2/3 of the funding going into affordable housing defined as below 30% of the area median income, because specifically we need to be able to build the housing so that people can get out of shelters and out of the streets and into affordable housing. And that actually helps provide additional opportunities for folks just above 30% area median income when we allow for greater density like the type we've been talking about.
Thank you so much, Teresa. All right, Bruce, on to you.
So in addition to, the percentages that some of my colleagues have talked about, whether a person's paying 30% or more for their rent, certainly they would be housing insecure or a renter in bad shape. But I must tell you that in addition to their housing costs, we look at the costs of bread, milk, and eggs, and the other items that are necessary to live in this city. And we then realize when we factor that in addition to taxes, how expensive it is to live. And so under our platform, we will not only monitor that. I mean, you may recall I was a lead negotiator in the minimum wage. We're going to look at all of the upstream, other kinds of things we could do through my Seattle Job Center, through my empowerment program. We will even look at the minimum wage discussion once again. We'll look at the tax exemptions for that we can increase to make sure people could stay in their homes. So we realize our society have produced a whole new subclass of people who are housing insecure. They know it, and two people could make the same amount of money and someone may have a medical bill or other needs. And so we work feverishly to be granular on our approach.
Thank you so much, Bruce. All right, Lorena.
Thank you so much for the question. Affordability is really about building health and opportunity throughout our community. And for many of those, particularly for those of us in communities of color, or for those people who are single parenting, it is too difficult to ever imagine a world in which you might be able to own your own home in this city. That's why under my plan as mayor, I'm committed to building the 37,000 affordable housing units that are going to be necessary to be able to address the housing stability and housing needs of the extremely low income within our city. And I'm gonna sort of center the needs of that extremely low income population when we take a look at the housing levy in the next few years. So I think that's critically important to really build that housing infrastructure and to build housing choice in every neighborhood throughout the city, so that we aren't left with the only possibility being an $850,000 single family home, which is out of reach for so many working families in our city.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Lorena. All right, last up for this question is Nikita.
So for me, affordable housing allows a family to pay their rent or mortgage, buy quality food, and pay for transportation and have access to healthcare and still put money away. Without the ability to save for a rainy day, one healthcare bill, one repair bill, one employment gap can force a household into homelessness. And we have an extreme racial wealth gap in our region where 35% of white households are severely cost burdened, 56% of Black, half of the Latinx households in our region, and our oldest, youngest, and communities with disabilities are at extreme risk of homelessness. So focusing on creating support and ongoing structure through our regional homelessness authority, increasing our acquisition, construction, and preservation of currently affordable units, specifically for those that are at our lowest AMIs, and prioritizing affordability within a half mile of walk sheds that will be alongside transit hubs so that families can have access both to affordable transit and deeply affordable housing.
Thank you so much, Nikita. All right, on to question 5. Displacement is a major concern of ours. Upzoning the Central District and all urban hub villages to multifamily has the effect of raising property taxes because of new potential for development. This is forcing low-income older homeowners, notably those in the Central District, to leave their cultural homes. It's called economic displacement. Do you have a solution to this displacement? And we will start with this time with Ken. You are leading off on this question.
Thanks. Great question again. And it's not just in that Central District. Ballard withstood some of that same things. I'm in Wallingford and having through the Holla situation, some of the same things happen to me. So what's going on is these affordable houses. So even just up the street from me at Hamilton by the middle school there, 3 college students are now being forced to leave so that they can build 5 houses. And so you think of even doing these simple numbers, just as Ms. Gonzalez talked about, if you have $800,000 for those houses that they're about to sell, each of them, what family can compete with that purchase? So by allowing a zoning that upzones these areas, we have destroyed the opportunity to prevent that from happening. We have to plan smarter. We have to focus the things that we can develop and need to develop, but not tear apart our neighborhoods. It's back to protecting our neighborhoods. And that's where I will stand.
Thank you so much, Ken. Teresa.
Thank you so much for this question. I think it has to be more than just a protectionist attitude. If what we're seeing is folks not be able to afford to live in the city and be welcoming to new families and new small businesses who want to come, if what we're seeing is our elders and communities of color getting displaced, which is the reality of the question you asked, then we must do more. We must allow for more people to be able to have access to the resources to live in place. That's why I've prioritized funding for homeowners to be able to stay in place, especially our elders who are low income and communities of color, helping them do weatherization and improvements to their homes so they can stay there and they're not maybe enticed by the sale of their home. We've done more to create first-time home ownership options across the city. As the budget chair and also the chair of housing for the last 4 years now, I've helped to triple the investments in affordable housing across the city, and that is prioritizing home ownership opportunities as well. I've told the city to stop selling public land at the highest rate to the most private bidder. We put legislation forward so that when there's a parcel that comes up that's city-owned land, we should be holding on to that and building affordable housing, community centers, senior centers in place and not selling it to the highest bidder. And I'll continue to do more to make sure that homeowners have the support they need as well as renters so we can be diverse. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. All right, up to Bruce to answer that question.
Sure. So we should, as a city, and I will lead the discussion to make sure that we revisit any of the assumptions we did during our Holla work. And yes, I grew up in the Central District and I see what has occurred. So there's a few tools we will look at. We will look at the use of land trusts, building trusts such as people who want to stay in their homes. And we talked about the DADU and ADU possibilities, but even if they choose to sell, perhaps they can get some of the upside value and staying on their property in any future development. And that's how we can make sure we can keep people in their neighborhoods, in addition to lowering the taxes for them, particularly loosening the restrictions. I will tell you, I mentioned earlier our use of community block grant organizations and CDFIs. That's something that I'm very experienced in, that is exactly the kind of financing we'll do to keep people in their homes. The King County Equity Now organization, they are right in their approach to make sure that we can seize land and keep people in their land and make sure that people enjoy the upside of the appreciation of projects, and I support that.
Thank you so much, Bruce, for that answer. Lorena.
Thank you so much. For me, economic displacement is really important for us to sort of put on the table exactly what we're talking about. And really, economic displacement has resulted in pushing waves of low income, primarily BIPOC communities and working families out of every neighborhood inner city, including the Central District. The result when we don't take economic displacement seriously is that we see a less inclusive and a less just city that really does force our lowest income working class families to spend hours commuting in and out of downtown, congesting our streets, and further exacerbating the realities of the climate crisis for us. So it is critical for us to acknowledge that the circumstances under which this has allowed to be happening is that we do not allow for housing choice, especially affordable housing choices, to occur throughout every neighborhood, residential neighborhood in our city. So we have to change that status quo if we are serious about being a city that is not just allowable for the wealthy and the exclusive.
Thank you so much, Lorena. Nikita.
So this question actually makes the argument for why density needs to be shared throughout the entirety of the city and not just restricted to a few neighborhoods. It's important that we note those neighborhoods that have taken on the most upzones are also those neighborhoods that were historically redlined and historically Black and brown neighborhoods, which is why we are seeing Black and brown peoples rapidly gentrified out of the city. And that conversation also has to be held in the context of an immense racial wealth gap and economic apartheid. Things that I recommend is focusing on HB 1410, which protects homeowners from foreclosure due to unpaid property taxes, and leveraging the Jumpstart Fund for weatherization of our seniors and lowest income homeowners to decrease their utility costs. Developing and identifying equitable development zones, which focus economic development initiative funds into those neighborhoods, ensuring that both our small businesses, homeowners, and new developments prioritize those who have made that community a thriving place through community benefits agreements as we continue to do upzones.
Thank you so much. Sarah.
All right, I sort of already addressed this question when I was talking about an anti-displacement strategy, but I want to just, I was at the CD Panthers yesterday, their football games at Judkins Park, talking to community members. And this one person told me that they're worried about the homeowners being pushed out by new renters, and what does that do to their community? And so we need an anti-displacement strategy that really does take in the nuances of what individual neighborhoods need. But let's talk about the other side of affordability and displacement, and that's jobs. Small businesses provide the jobs that most people in the private sector in Seattle work at, and we're not doing enough to help them survive or develop our workforce through connecting people with job training and apprenticeship opportunities. And then the frontline workers in our downtown core are losing jobs as well, because we haven't done enough to really make sure, intentionally and deliberately to bring back our downtown core. So I think that.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, so I'm afraid we don't have enough time for all the other questions that we gave to the candidates, but hopefully you can incorporate that into your closing statements. The next round is a yes/no round. And what we'll do is I'll read a question and you will say either yes or no to that. And then I'll read out who are the yeses and the nos so that everyone on the call is clear about that. So the first question, this is a fun one. Seattle has more dogs than children. but only 14 off-leash dog parks that most people have to drive to. Would you support a goal of a dog park within walking distance of every urban center or village to make complete neighborhoods? Yes or no? Okay, let's see. Yes, let's see. I'm
Say
waiting.
yes, I live near one.
Oh, all right, I'm waiting for Sarah and Lorena.
yeah.
So,
So I wasn't sure if there was going to be an oral answer or
no, just use your
really.
thumbs. Okay, so
Yeah.
what I see is
I'll mute.
Bruce, Lorena, Nikita, Ken, and Teresa are a yes. And are you a yes there, Sarah?
It depends. I don't want to displace the places where people are playing right now, especially in Judkins Park.
Okay, good. So question 2. So again, the same thing, yes or no? Will increased market rate housing development in Seattle improve affordable housing? Yes or no? Okay, Lorena's yes. Nikita's yes. Yeah,
That's correct. Can you repeat it, Mary? Will it,
Yes.
will
will
market rate
increase,
improve affordability?
yeah, improve housing affordability.
Market rate, I suppose so. Yes.
Okay, and everyone I believe is saying yes, but Ken is saying no. Thank you. All right, third question. It's often said that you can't improve what you can't measure. To prevent any further loss of tree canopy, will you institute tracking of significant and exceptional trees removed from all public and private lands? Yes or no? Okay, I see. Yes. Everyone says yes. All right, on to question 4. Do you support strengthening Seattle's tree protection ordinance to increase protection for existing trees and increase tree planting in low-income and previously redlined neighborhoods with insufficient tree canopy to reduce heat island impacts and counter climate damage? Yes or no?
Long statement, yes.
Everyone's yes, thank you. All right. Question 5, does the elimination of single-family zoning cause a loss of older, more affordable homes? In other words, does it cause displacement? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to read this out because there's a difference. So I'm going with the yeses first.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Does the elimination of single-family zoning cause a loss of older, more affordable homes? In other words, does it cause displacement? Yes or no?
Those signal families.
Okay, I'm gonna go for, please keep your hands up. I'm gonna go with the yeses first. So Bruce says yes, Ken says yes, Sarah says yes. On the no side, Lorena, Nikita, and Teresa say no. Thank you. You guys are getting really good at this. We probably could have gotten through 20.
They're fun.
All right, the 6th question, mandatory housing affordability, or MHA, is not working as intended because only 12% of projects include low-income housing on site when the goal is 50%. Would you support raising the fees so that developers will be more likely to include affordable units on site? Yes or no?
Eliminate the fees, make them build it
Okay,
tough.
I'm gonna, so keep your hands up and I'll just read through real quick. So
It's a
we
rule.
have-
You build it. You said it, you build it.
So it's Bruce, Lorena, Nikita, Sarah, and Teresa say yes, and Ken says no. Thank you. Number 7, Seattle pioneered the concept of urban villages and urban centers, defined as places with multiple transit routes within a 10-minute walk. Do you support retaining the 39 urban villages and transit-oriented development as a core planning principle for absorbing density while maximizing access to transit? Yes or no?
I'm not sure I even understand it. Can we say not undecided?
You guys, is this your opportunity just to communicate to the voters if you have a yes or no or otherwise? So I see uncertainty by
Mhm.
Bruce. He's on the side. So if I could just see a show of hands on your answers.
It depends on what it's replaced
I
with.
wanna
If
see-
Okay,
it's
so we
yeah,
got
replaced.
this is
Sarah,
really complicated. Good
Ken,
question.
these are complicated
I'm
questions.
sorry. Yeah, no, I
It's
appreciate
on
them. They're
itself.
good questions. We need to ask these. So,
So Lorena, what is yours? Is that a yes or no?
I because the question is phrased as it being the only growth strategy. If that's how it's phrased, then I would have to say no. But if it's
Yes.
urban villages, urban cores plus, then, you know, that's obviously something that I support. But if it's being posed as the only growth strategy, it's a no. for me.
It's just one of the many tools, but let's see, Nikita, what was your answer?
I'm in alignment with what Council President Gonzalez just said about.
Okay, and Teresa?
Thank you.
What's your answer?
I want to reiterate, it can both go hand in hand. We can have density options across our city and also continue to enhance our urban growth villages, our urban villages.
Thank you so much. All right, okay, here on to another one. After the 2017 rezoning of the U District to a high rise of 32 stories, Urban Center, do you support retaining the pedestrian core of our main shopping street of the Ave and its current height of 65 feet? So this is again a yes or no question. Okay, thumbs up or down? Let's see, we've got Bruce is up. I'm gonna go for the ups first. Ken's up and Sarah's up. Down is Lorena, Nikita, and Teresa. Thank you.
I'd like to add, we can do more in the airspace and maintain the storefronts as they are with the existing retail shops and business owners there, and then do setbacks on the top and use the airspace that I'd like.
Right.
to do.
You're
And,
just
well,
working,
while
you're
we're
fighting the
adding-
You guys
businesses, toss
stop.
them out with that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You guys, these are complicated questions
Yeah.
and I really, you know, it's so tempting to want to have a broader conversation on this. Here is, I've got two more questions here for you. South Park is a low-income neighborhood of single-family homes cherished for its ethnic diversity. Will you commit to protecting the South Park urban village from encroachment by new development and its industrial neighbors? Yes or no? Bruce says, yeah, I'll go for the yeses first. Bruce is yes. Ken, Sarah, on the nose, Lorena, Nikita, and Teresa's on the side. And Lorena's on the side. Nikita, where do you sit?
What does new development mean?
I know. these
Well,
questions.
there you go with a complicated question there. Thank you.
Because I was in South Park yesterday and Habitat for Humanity turned one single family home into 13 homes for brand new homeowners. And that is the kind of both and approach I love.
Great
around
Mexican
trees,
food down
guys,
there,
around
and
trees.
the 14th, 16th.
Thank
bridge.
you
Go check
so
out
much.
our Ballard Bridge.
So much
Basco
good
Bridge.
opportunity here. See, this is why we need really engaged, you know, mayors and city council members, because you have a lot of opportunity. All right, one more question here. Will you incorporate genuine and representational community input into the massive redevelopment of our city? Yes or no?
You better off.
Okay, it looks at everybody says yes. Thank you. That's a tough round, you guys. Thank you for sticking with us on that. Those are important questions to all the neighborhoods who have been sponsoring here. All right, now we're coming to the end where you each get 2 minutes to have a closing statement. And what we're going to do this time, and again, we're just trying to rotate through. We're going to start with Teresa, and then we'll go back to the top of the list. And I will give you, you mean the yellow? I will, just to let you know, when you're close to 2 minutes, I'll give you the yellow. Oh, well, you can't even see that, sorry. You know what, we'll go back to the old method. All right, starting with Teresa, if you could have your closing statements and incorporate anything in you think is important for the voters to consider.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate this last round of questions. As I think you can tell, I am somebody who is not interested in a hard yes or a hard no. I've worked the last 4 years, and in my time in coalition, 15, 20 years before that, finding common ground, building broad coalitions, bringing unlikely allies to the table. I've done this in our work to create progressive revenue with large businesses and small housing and community activists together at the table to not only invest in housing, but to make sure we're doing equitable development to get at those cultural root entities like you talked about earlier. I've done this before when we've talked about supporting our lowest wage workers by bringing in those employers as well and trying to find common ground, like I did on much of the legislation that we passed in front of us. We had nannies and caregivers, along with those who employ domestic workers, at the table to pass our groundbreaking legislation. I am somebody who will bring people together to find that common ground. And in this moment, in the wake of COVID, that is exactly what our community needs. I will continue to champion progressive policies by making sure all voices are heard, by going into community and soliciting ideas, by hearing directly from the community impacted. I know that that was one of your questions, and that is something I've been committed to and will continue to do. I want to make sure that Seattle is not just more affordable and more inclusive, but that it is truly more walkable, that it's thriving, that we have green canopies and setbacks, places for small businesses as well as elders and our kiddos to enjoy along our streets, so we slow down traffic and have folks be able to get out and walk around. This is the place that I'm raising our kiddo. I want more families to be able to afford to live in this community. The fair growth approach is something where I think there is a lot of common ground in finding thoughtful solutions to addressing the most pressing crisis in our community. And that is the lack of affordable housing, the lack of housing in general, and the crisis of homelessness, which go hand in hand. As your Seattle City Council member, I'll continue to find those bridges and solutions with you that are actionable right now in the wake of COVID. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Teresa. All right, on to Bruce.
Well, thank you for putting the forum together. You know what I think is drastically missing from our city right now is sort of that quality that I've always thought made it so special. The voice of the neighborhoods are not heard the way they should be heard. The voice of just common folks. I mean, when the city council does something as what seems to be as innocuous as a name change, they're not trusting it. I think that under my candidacy that you will hear your voices heard. You'll hear the voices of small business owners, a small landlord that owns one unit, as an example. There are many voices that are not heard in City Hall. I'm out in the community at grocery stores and coffee shops, on play fields, because that's what our candidacy is all about. If we make a mistake, we will say we need to revisit this policy. We made a mistake and we will do better. I will tell you, you're going to see new infrastructure under my leadership. You're going to see block watches, 7-minute response times, unbiased, culturally competent officers, unarmed responses, de-escalation, masters of de-escalation, true community building. You're going to see people walking together. You're going to see PTSAs. Even, I was very active in my daughter's PTSA when she was at Cleveland High School. You're going to see a whole new infrastructure of engagement, because that is what makes Seattle special. And I think the mayor has a great opportunity sort of to redefine who we're going to be here in the next many years. I don't denigrate any of my fine colleagues who's running either for mayor, city council, or city attorney. I'm going to try to bring out the best in the city and bring in some of the best people. We will lead with our values. We will make data-based decisions. And I want everyone to feel safe and feel like we are heading in the right direction. That's what makes the city great. And that is why I love the city so much. Thank you very much. And I ask for your support and your vote.
Thank you so much, Bruce. All right, next, Lorena, you're up.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you, and thanks for organizing an opportunity for us to just have some good conversations. So, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and as a lifelong Democrat and as someone who grew up in deep poverty myself, I know all too well that the gap between the rich and the rest of us is just making this city too hard for so many of us to live in. And that bears out primarily in the context of the pricing of our housing. Housing is just entirely too expensive for anyone to be able to actually obtain and to actually begin the process of addressing the disparities in the racial wealth gap throughout our city. So I am committed as the next mayor of the city to make sure that we are centering those voices in our community outreach and engagement that have been historically excluded from conversations. Those are low-income families, people of color, others who, again, have never had a seat at the table. And it is important for us to do that in order to once and for all tackle the vestiges of redlining and exclusionary zoning throughout our city. I believe that work will lead us towards creating the vision of a 15-minute city, a city in which we have parks, good parks, where we have good sidewalks, where we have grocery stores and affordable childcare, and an opportunity to just walk or roll on a bike towards your destination within 15 minutes of where you live. This has to be paired with anti-displacement and anti-gentrification strategies. We'll have an opportunity to do that through our next housing levy, and making sure that we are funding things like lease to home ownership opportunities and increase funding for capital for ADU and DADU construction, and so much more to allow people to create space and to build new ways of being able to live with and amongst each other, because that's the kind of city we need to be able to build. We hear a lot as Democrats that we're on this train to build back better. This is our opportunity to do that, and I hope
Thank
that you will
you.
join me in building a more just, equitable city.
Thank you so much, Lorena. So many things for all of you to contribute here. Nikita.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to share space with you on a Sunday evening and spending your time with a bunch of talking heads discussing nuance and development. We need electeds who will uplift a diversity of tactics, a multiplicity of solutions, coalition building, and community organizing to address the critical crises that are in front of us. Our city is facing extreme compounding crises, and we can no longer delay on effectively responding to those crises and the root causes that are driving them. For many years, I have worked on issues of public safety and public health right on the front lines of those, experiencing the ways in which policy created in council chambers unfold and may or may not actually change the material conditions of those that are most marginalized and vulnerable in our city. As our regional homelessness authority comes online, it will be important that we build a strong collaboration to address the homelessness crisis. It'll also be equally important that as Seattle City Council members, we develop a significant and holistic upstream solutions to be able to address the homelessness crisis and the housing affordability crisis. We also need to focus on ending the vestiges of redlining and exclusionary zoning, which have been in place for nearly 100 years since 1923, when known segregationist Harlan Bartholomew contributed to our first comprehensive plan, and the upcoming plan presents a serious opportunity for both increasing density, addressing the climate catastrophe, building affordable housing, and ending the history of redlining and its continued exclusion of most from accessing the majority of our land. And I believe that we need to do all this through progressive revenue generation, not just so we can get out of the crisis, but to strengthen our budget to be more resilient against recessions and be able to serve our city more broadly so that everyone here can be thriving. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club, Washington Conservation Voters, 350 Seattle, Sunrise Seattle, Working Families Party, the Urbanists, MLK Labor Council, Transit Riders, and Seattle Subway because of my commitment to building a healthier, thriving city for everyone.
Thank you very much, Nikita. And bringing us home is Ken.
Did Sarah already get to go? Anyway, all right. Well, I thank you for these times.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? Thank you, Ken. That is
I'll go after Ken. Go ahead.
Oh, no, no, I'm just kidding.
I marked you down, Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, well, most importantly, this chance to talk and get together about these really critical items and issues are really valuable. I want you to know there's a lot of things on this list, and most of them are just bullets that I'm trying to say. But first off, we have to get back to a council that is accountable to this city. We say things and we have to do that. So we need a council that interacts with you, comes to your community. You don't have to haul all the way down to the city and try and find parking and things like that. We need to come to you. But mostly you guys are about Seattle fair growth. This is about home ownership. Small housing providers are a key. How do we keep those people? And a lot of the talk here is, well, you know, maybe we don't understand how it was being poor. All of us had that. Many of us had those challenges. I did. Our power was turned off as a kid, things like that. But you kind of build out of that. I took that small house and renovated it, trying to turn it into a rental. But you could see the number of challenges that we're getting from the city and regulation are really destroying that. All the people that rented from me, many of them turned into buying a house. The last tenants that left bought a new house. And so how'd they do that? COVID came along and immediately their rent was reduced by $500 a month for 6 months, a $3,000 bonus to help them get into a new situation. The previous before that was Sherry, a single mom with a child. So these small providers are fundamental, and where we damage them and prevent them from doing good jobs to help us is really important. But mostly, I'm an engineer. This is about infrastructure. We talked a lot about zoning. There's lots of things we can do here. And it's really about planning smart, protecting our trees, stopping mismanagement of our infrastructure. and addressing the things in front of us. There's real safety issues. There's real homeless challenges. Why do they sit and we allow the council to be unaccountable? So I thank you for your time and super great questions. I hope we'll keep this interaction going as long as we can.
Thank you so much, Ken. And Sarah, not last, we will let you go next. Thank you.
Good save. All right, well, sometimes I say at these forums that if you think things are going well in Seattle, I'm probably not your candidate because I am running a change campaign. And I just believe that the extremist policies of this city council haven't worked, and they're not helping our most vulnerable, which should be our priority. But what I really want to talk about is it's just really time to have a city council that connects with real people living real lives and struggling with some really big challenges. And that's the kind of council member I want to be. Government is messy and nuanced, and we need to have the humility to listen to people and to really take input. And you know, on the campaign trail, we're always asked, do you want to end single family zoning? Yes or no? Well, we should not be leading with that kind of question, because the future of Seattle depends on really listening and putting forward implementable, pragmatic solutions, things that can make a difference in people's real lives tomorrow, not far down the line. And so I'm just a pragmatic, progressive, experienced person. I've got, I think it is important to have a small business owner on council, because that is important for the Seattle's future also. But I'll just close with who's endorsed me, because I always forget that. Seattle Times, firefighters, machinists, laborers, Seattle Building and Construction Trades Council, Reverend Harriet Walden, Victoria Beach of the African American Advisory Council, and many more. So I've got a broad range of support because we all have one thing in common, and that's to build a safe and livable Seattle for everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I just want to be able to say to all of you candidates, thank you from all of Seattle for being willing to be a public servant. It is a challenging thing to do, and you had lots of interesting things to say tonight. Thank you for coming to the neighborhood forum and being able to understand the questions that they have and all the support that we have for that. And with that, I will turn this back over to John. Go ahead, John. You're on mute, John.
Sorry. Send my thank yous again. Thank you, candidates, for coming today. You did a great job. We in Seattle are very lucky to have such great candidates, such a diverse group of candidates, such a talented group of candidates. And we were talking about that before this meeting, and I feel that's so true right now. I want to also thank our sponsors today. We couldn't have done this without you. We couldn't have had a great forum. This was a fantastic forum, and we have a great, very important election coming up. So it's you, the audience, everybody out there who are really important. And thank you, everybody in the audience, for your civil engagement. This will be recorded. We will be posting this event on seattlefairgrowth.com. Thanks again for everybody coming, and we wish you a great night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.